Welcome to Hospitality Talks. This is Sam-Erik, and I have my co-host Abid joining me. Hello, Abid. How are you doing?
Oh, very well. Thank you, Sam. Good to be back on the air. Thanks for organizing that.
I gotta show you a fancy thing. If you look at the screen, I got our topics. Speaking subject. You see that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Well,
nice.
I'm
Very
trying. I'm
nice.
trying to upgrade our episode. So over to you, Abid. We have a great panel who's joining us. That is joining us today about tech trends and adoption of in the current crisis. Take it away.
Very apropos, Sam. We've got a bunch of techies on the panel today, so it's very good that you're starting out that way. I think there is a lot of conversation that has been had about hospitality industry adopting technology or being resistant to it, about the fragmented nature of the industry, about the costs that are involved with it, along with the shelf life that these apps or these technological things stay relevant to what people are trying to do. Hospitality industry is a thin margin industry, and we have typically not been in the forefront of taking some of these technological tools to implement them in our industry. With the COVID in place, I believe, at least the conversation is that COVID might be the catalyst that the industry will have to adopt some of these things because the consumer is going to ask for it. So our panel today will help us understand what types of tools are available, how can we utilize them, what are the new trends, and how do they evaluate these tools that come on the market, and what goes into that thought process. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring in Mark Haley, who's the partner in Prism Hospitality Consulting. Mark, welcome to Hospitality Talks.
Thank you, Abid, and thank you, Sam-Erik. Pleased to be here today and welcome the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas with our audience.
Superb. Mark, in one of the recent articles that I was reading, some of the trends that they had talked about, at least in the hospitality space, that are being sought after by the consumer as well as the industry guys, whether it is wireless charging, it's virtual reality, data security is a big issue, interactive walls. And most recently, the article that I read was about tech wearables. Sands in Vegas has bought these rings that are actually made in Sam's backyard. It's a Finnish company that is producing these rings that is supposed to monitor your vitals. And they're going to implement these rings for the hotel staff so that if they start to show any symptoms of COVID, they will know and they can isolate them. So there is a lot of innovation that technology has brought about. But hospitality, as we all know, has not been in the forefront of adoption. So help us understand, what are some of the new tools? What are some of the innovations that you have seen and you've been dealing with?
Well, the wearables aren't really that new a thing in hospitality. They've been popular in water parks for quite a few years now, with the idea of wearing a wristband with an RFID chip on it. And that's used as a waterproof, losing-proof means of identifying the guest for access to the water park, for charging a meal in the snack bar, those kinds of things. So wearables have actually had a presence in hospitality for a while. The staff monitoring piece is perhaps new, but we're all familiar with the panic button kind of application, which would also generally be considered a wearable, where if a room attendant feels threatened in some way, they have a way to call for help in an automated manner, perhaps one that will scare off the perceived attacker. In terms of other areas of innovation, travel and travel technology in general are a very fertile area for investment and innovation today. The long-running themes that continue to see a lot of growth and movement are cloud, mobile, and big data. And those are all areas that we're seeing some things. A lot of it's behind the scenes. But on the big data front, for example, we've got companies that are applying big data concepts to revenue management practices to drive their pricing, what have you. And outside the hotel space proper, but in our industry, you would probably put Airbnb and Vacasa at the top of that list. So there's some real innovation going on there. And another area that is maybe not so visible and not such a broad-based theme as cloud, mobile, and big data, but the concept of open APIs or application program interfaces. A current trend that's kind of running underneath the surface of the water for a while now has been the idea of developing a database with all your data in it, writing an open API that sits on top of that database, and the software vendor actually writes their program and their user interface using their own API, and then that API can be exposed to other participants in the value chain so that they have the same access to the data and the business logic and the rules as the software vendor does. So you could create your own user interface if you wanted to.
Mark, how prevalent is this? Has it been rolled out, or has it been tested? And as an owner or as an operator, should I wait until the next guy has tried it before I jump in the water?
Well, one of the earliest leaders in the hospitality technology period was a professor at Cornell named Dick Moore. And Dick was famous for his rules of hospitality technology. And Dick Moore's first rule of hospitality technology was, don't be the first customer. His second rule was, don't be the last customer. His third rule was, don't be the biggest customer.
So the challenge with that is, don't be the first customer. Well, the technology is moving so fast that inevitably you end up being sometimes the first customer. And if you wait for not being the last customer, I'm not sure what that looks like. In part of the reason why in the industry generally, technology has not been so commonly adopted. Let's talk about overall business, our industry. What is your opinion? How has technology changed our business over the years?
Well, a profound and pervasive impact, and not just our business, but really our lives. We didn't used to carry supercomputers around in our pockets that allow us to do just about anything that you could do with a mainframe computer 25 years ago. Now it's a commonplace, and 10-year-olds carry their Apple iPhones to school with them. I think a big way that technology has impacted the business, not in terms of the hardware and the software itself, but it's changed who our customers are. Okay, and there are now tens of thousands and even millions of technology workers that are out there staying in our hotels today, and they have vastly elevated expectations compared to when technology workers were a much smaller segment of the traveling public. So the idea that Wi-Fi is probably the third most important amenity in the hotel after bed and bath.
So is there a generational difference? And I'll turn it over to Sam here in a bit, but do you think there is a generational difference as to which age group is more dependent on technology and which age group can do without? I know all of us are at times fatigued with having this phone in our pocket that it's become a leash that you can't get away from. So have you seen if there's a one particular demographic that leans more on technology?
Well, probably the biggest demographic differential that I've become sensitive to is the so-called millennials just absolutely assume that technology will be pervasive and omnipresent and always working, whereas maybe older people are used to, well, there's the occasional glitch here. And the fascinating thing about it to me is many of these millennial users that are very fluent and skilled with using the technology, but they have no interest in how it actually works. They're as interested in how the technology works as you are and I are interested in how a number 2 pencil works.
Well, in some ways, I can relate to that. I'm a user, even though I'm from a different generation. I'm a user. I find technology wonderful as long as it works. And the moment it stops working, it is wicked frustrating. In a lot of times, in an average consumer's life, you feel like you don't have a true answer as to what to do differently. So I can understand their desire not to learn what goes behind it, and they just want to be able to push the button and be able to get connected and do whatever it is that they're trying to do. I can clearly relate to that. In our sessions, as we were talking about earlier, inevitably, as we are trying to go live, there is something that happens that nobody knows why, or at least we haven't been able to figure it out why, that we have to deal with. And I think that'll be a great segue for me to turn it over to Sam. Sam, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. When your customer make a decision on the kind of solutions that are being offered, what is the couple of key criteria for them? Is it operational efficiency, or is it revenue generation, or is it just simply to collect a lot of data from the customer? What are your thoughts on that, just to and the understanding of what are your customers looking for when they order particular solutions?
Well, let's start off with putting forth an idea that I believe in strongly, and I think we should probably explore even more fully when you bring Dan Kornick into the conversation. But I believe strongly that technology strategy needs to follow and be driven by business strategy. What is the business trying to do? So earlier, Abid, you were talking about wireless charging capabilities. One hotel that I've been working with literally since before they opened in 1998 were in the early stages of implementing wireless charging pads, primarily for the TV remote controls. But if you put your iPhone iPhone 8 or newer down on it, it'll charge that without plugging it in for you, or current Android phone. The key QI wireless charging standard. And what was driving that was simply part of this hotel's business strategy is to be seen as leading edge in design, in service levels, and very fashion forward and out in front of everything. And they've been able to maintain that positioning for well over 20 years of successful operation. And one way they do that is looking for new and innovative technologies like the key charging system.
Okay, very, very interesting. Yeah, I'm always wondering, I mean, what is, when the company make a decision about getting the solution, is it that they're looking for a long-term solution that will last long enough for them, or are they ready to jump on to the latest because the customers are demanding it? What are your thoughts on that approach?
Well, Sam-Erik, I think we should look at that question in light of today's circumstances with pandemic-induced lockdowns, most upper upscale and luxury hotels just plain closed for months on end. And how are people making investment decisions in this context is, I think, very, very relevant at this time. And there's really two drivers. How do we reimagine the guest experience to minimize or eliminate points of contact? How do we make it touchless, if you will? And how do we reduce expenses? When there's no revenue coming in the front door, it's management's obligation to limit how much cash is going out the back door.
Yeah,
those are the drivers today.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that this COVID-19 has actually created lots of opportunities for startups to create new solutions and also to hotel companies to reevaluate what they if they had decided, well, let's not invest in this technology yet, but maybe that decision is being made quite fast. Are you feeling that similar thoughts in the industry?
Well, I think to the credit of the hospitality technology vendor community, there's been a tremendous amount of energy and excitement and speed in developing or modifying or repurposing products to support current requirements. For example, almost all major property management systems have existing room rotation schema that were intended to provide an even rotation of utilization for condos in a rent pooling scenario. Well, if you can take that room rotation capability and apply it to regular rooms and regular use, we now have created a means to spread guests out in time. Okay, that same room isn't going to be suggested over and over again if you apply these room rotation schema properly, but a different one will come up, and hopefully you can get to that 2 or 3 day fallow period between consecutive occupancies of the same guest room. The opportunity that we still see out there in PMS functionality related to this stuff is we need some logic that allows the hotel to separate the guest in space as well as time. So we need the PMS vendors to come up with a mechanism for suggest room 201, but do not suggest room 203. 205 is okay, but 207 is not, so that we can spread the guests out in space as well. And I've had that conversation with a couple of the PMS vendors, and I think at least one of them is taking it to heart.
Very good. Okay, thank you. Those are excellent answers to these questions. So over to you, Abid.
Mark, sustainability is another topic that is front and center now, even though it's been talked about in the industry for a long time. But I think one more time with COVID in place, that it has become a big topic. How is technological initiatives supporting the sustainability efforts?
Well, lots of ways, and this is a personal passion of mine. I'm an aggressive recycler. I drive a hybrid car. This is something I really believe in. And we found an awful lot of ways to drive sustainability in hotels. I think one of my favorites is the emailed folios, where even before you get out of bed in the morning, there's a soft copy of your folio in your email. Nobody's sliding it under your door anymore. So not only are we not printing it, we're not incurring the labor costs of somebody walking around the hotel, sliding folios under the door, and maybe at some time putting the wrong folio under the wrong door. That's a problem. But we've reduced printing of folios countless times. Other things that reduce paper consumption. Many, if not most, hotels have gotten away from distributing newspapers, but luxury hotels in particular will often make an e-reader service available so that you can access local newspapers or magazines or worldwide newspapers or magazines through an e-reader service that is activated while you're a guest of the hotel. So all those USA Today that nobody ever read don't get slid under the door anymore. A tremendous amount of things revolving to reducing power consumption. The energy management systems that passively reduce power consumption for HVAC in the room, where if the guest is out of the room, the HVAC system drifts to a comfortable setback and then re-engages with the last guest entered temperature setting when the guest comes back into the room. Saves a lot of money on the bottom line, saves power. One of the key benefits of cloud computing is the compute power is now centralized in highly efficient, centralized, large capacity data centers run by companies like Amazon Web Services. And they'll put these data centers in, well, Finland, Sam-Erik, where it tends to be a very cool climate, so they don't even need a whole lot of air conditioning capacity to keep the heat down in these data centers with tens of thousands of blade servers spinning at a high rate of speed, throwing off heat. They just pump in the cold air from outside.
Terrific. These topics, I'm glad that they are being discussed, and I'm glad that there is a better appetite to look at them closely and adopt them. do you think the industry is looking at these initiatives differently today than they might have pre-COVID time period?
They're not looking at it at all. The only things that matter in anybody's mindset today is touchless guest experience, reduce expenses.
Fair enough. The touchless guest experience, and I think it's a great segue, Mark. Touchless guest experience, I think, is a bit of a misnomer and might be in conflict with what the hospitality has been. And I'm not sure if anybody has come up with the right answer. So I believe our next guest that I'm going to bring on line at this particular point, Dan Kornick, who's the Chief Information Officer of Loews Hotels. We would like to learn from Dan as to what they are doing relative to this whole touchless experience, or is it mostly that the personal interaction is going to be done differently? Mark, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your input. Would love to have you back at another episode to continue these conversations. Dan, welcome to Hospitality Talks.
Hey, good morning, Sam-Erik and Abid. Thanks for having me on your show today and kind of look forward to this discussion.
Well, thank you. Dan, help us understand Loews' philosophy and your own philosophy as to what goes into evaluating technological initiatives when you are considering some new things that you want to implement.
All right. As you may know, at Loews Hotels, we're both the owner and operator of the majority of our properties. So I think from our philosophy, it may be different than other brands or other hotels. So pre-pandemic, we were running about 84% occupancy across our brand and an average daily rate of about $250. So when we're evaluating technology, it's not about the technology, it's about the business impact. So the first question I'm always asked is, Dan, will that raise our occupancy from 84 to 85%? Or can I charge more for that room because of this project or initiative? So that's the number one question I'm going to get asked by our COO, CFO, and our general managers. The second is, hey, are there cost savings or revenue improvements, and particularly labor savings, right? That is the biggest cost in any hotel. How can we be more efficient, more effective? And then third, is it life safety? Is it, Mark mentioned earlier, panic buttons? Is it regulatory? Or very importantly, is it cybersecurity related where we can keep our assets protected? So that's kind of the criteria I walk through in my head for every investment that we look to make.
Are you able to check all those boxes every time you've looked at an initiative? And do you place a different weight on one over the other?
The weight is always on what is the biggest return for the investment. Right at the end of the day, as an owner, you've got to say, do I want to invest my capital in more hotels? Do I want to invest it in improving the hotels, or do I want to put it into technology? And you have to weigh all those different criteria about the investment of your own capital. So it's not just an IT decision, it's what makes sense for our brand and our business.
Dan, do you have any thoughts on the shelf life of some of these technological initiatives that have been rolled out? Obviously things are changing unbelievably fast. The customer expectation continues to change very, very fast. Any thoughts on how does that go into evaluating a particular technology or particular initiative that you're going to undertake?
I think we always try to differentiate between trend and trendy. To me right now, voice in the room is very trendy. But if I look at putting Alexa in our rooms, am I going to drive a higher occupancy? No. Am I going to drive a higher rate? No. Am I going to have security concerns? Yes. Is it something guests might, and I'm going to use the word might want? Yes. But when I weigh it together, that doesn't mean that we're going to go forward with it because the length of that investment and the payoff just isn't going to be there. To your point, that type of technology is changing year over year. So you've got to make sense. Why do I want to make that investment and when?
And I'll turn it over to Sam here in a bit. You bring up a very good point. These voice assistants, I guess a lot of times initially these technologies are used in domestic environment. And once a consumer gets used to it at their place of residence, they are more into looking for that when they travel. Now, voice assistants are being rolled out at a tremendous speed. A lot of households have, if it's Alexa or Google or Siri, whatever it is that they use, but more and more and more people that are getting used to this. I can tell you from my personal experience, at one point, my wife was deadly against having these things in our house. And now every other question is to Google. A lot of our dinner conversations that used to end up in some sort of an argument, now Google is the moderator that gives us the information that can define what is the correct answer. Do you think consumer is going to be looking for that in hotels before too long?
I think they will look for it, but I think in where it fits in their criteria, it's going to be lower on the same. It's usually, hey, where am I going and why? So it's proximity and its location. It's how much do I want to spend? What is the purpose, business, pleasure? What amenities are important to me, whether it's beach, whatever it might be? I think voice is going to be pretty low on that totem pole.
Fair enough. Sam, over to you, please.
Thank you. Then I'm interested on sort of your customer demographics. Are the difference in the kind of requests and requirements that the customers have, whether they are boomers or millennials and so on, in your hotels?
I think there's always a difference. If I take my own personal situation, my parents, they don't care about a mobile app. They still have flip phones, right? So they're more inclined to talk to people. They like that more customized, personalized experience at the front desk. For my kids, I've got 5 kids. They are more, hey, let me just do it on my phone. Let me skip the line. Let me just be more self-sufficient. So it's all about choice. I'm not sure we worry as much about the demographics of it as giving our customers a choice of how they want to engage with us, because it's up to us to provide them those multiple ways to engage and what's most comfortable for them, what's going to give them the best experience. It's not an either or, it's truly choice.
Yeah. So what is sort of the next thing in your company investments in terms of technology or solutions that you are putting, maybe because of what has happened during this corona, or maybe prior to that you had already planned?
As I think Mark raised earlier, it's most hotel chains are in survival mode or doing their best to weather out this storm. If I look at Loews in particular, we suspended operations at 90% of our hotels. We've slowly been opening them back up. We're now 70% open. But the devastating impact to us is going to take years to recover from. So it's not about technology impact. It's how do you really deliver for the business, and how do you come out of this really crisis mode? Yeah. So to us, it's going to be that, how do I provide that choice? How do I make guests comfortable coming to Loews? Right. So from a technology side, it's all about a low contact strategy. I don't think there's a no contact, but a contactless, but it's low contact. So right now we are piloting mobile check-in, checkout, and digital key, which will roll out to all of our properties in the next 6 months. We're looking at mobile food and beverage capabilities. Who wants to walk into a restaurant, take a menu that other people have touched, have to deal with giving your credit card to pay? So we're going to put in mobile food and beverage capability where, whether it's room service, grab and go, or our restaurants, you can take your cell phone, you can pull up the menu, order, you can pay, you can charge it to your room, you can split that charge with your friends, you can split it between credit cards, you can order in advance, you can order your room service. That way we've taken the paper away, we've taken the points of friction away, and we're allowing the guests to interact if that's how they want to. Once again, if you want to come in, we will give you a paper one-time use menu. We will provide a digital menu in our TVs, which you can then call down to room service if that's how you text us your order. So it's just about giving choice. We're going to emphasize our chat your service. So we provide a texting capability that gets used by 38% of our guests, which was a very positive engagement. So now, hey, instead of picking up the phone, you can text us before, during, or after your stay. What do you need? More towels? Do you want to update your housekeeping? Do you want to know when the pool's going to be open? Do you want to know where the best ice cream is in Universal Parks? So we'll engage with you in that manner, and really we're emphasizing that. We've removed all paper from our rooms from COVID-19. It's up on the TV. It's on our Wi-Fi and screens. We'll send it to you.
Yeah. Do you have your own dedicated app which the customer will download, or you mentioned text is quite popular, so there would be maybe a third-party text app. What is
we decided to go with a chat your service text capability because it's more casual, it's more convenient. You don't have to worry about downloading an app. You can use it on any phone, even my parents' flip phone. So we haven't gone with the mobile app. We don't have a loyalty program. So I think that's usually the key driver for most brands in their app. Since we don't have that, we provide, our view of loyalty is we'll provide great personalized service to you. You're going to want to come back.
Yeah.
So the app's not really key to us at this point. We will be launching one because we'll need that for a digital key capability with the technology at this time. But we don't see that as a key component of the guest experience.
Yeah, I mean, some of the hotels that I talked to, the reason they have the app, one of the reasons is that they are able to collect a lot of data about the customer experience and the customer's experience while they are at the hotel, and then hopefully able to customize that experience or tailor that experience for the next time. So that's what they're looking at, and so I'm quite interested what is perception from different companies at the moment. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your input, and Abid, over to you.
Dan, can you tell us some of the projects that were on your hit list to complete? This is the normal world that we used to live in pre-COVID days. Some of the projects that you undertook that you thought were imperative that you got that done.
So projects that I stopped or projects that I've accomplished and looking...
projects that you undertook and implemented because you were wanting to make sure that they got done because they supported your business strategy.
All right. So in the last 2 years at Loews, since I've joined, we have moved all of our home office applications to the cloud, and we've shut down 2 of our data centers. So we did a 18-month project with 7 different work streams. We moved our financial systems to the cloud. We moved our HR systems to the cloud, CRS, PMS, our call center telephony, our email. So we did all this for better system availability, disaster recovery, security, cost savings, flexibility, and being able to maintain that we're always on the current release of all of our products, which really helps us be more efficient and effective. You know, with that, we've also rolled out tap to pay at all of our properties. So when you check in, you can just tap your phone, or if you're in the restaurant. And once again, it's about that choice to our customers, but it's also about security and ease of use. You know, we've been very focused on CRM and middleware. You know, in the hospitality industry, from a technology side, systems have never connected to each other easily. And most systems have been very insular in terms of their ability with open APIs. So we've implemented middleware to solve that problem so that the PMS isn't the center of the world. And we've also implemented CRM. So we've got one view of the customer. We know their preferences. We have all the information we need to better service them going forward. So those are just the few things we've accomplished in the last 2 years. Right now, we're focused on contactless and really also robotic process automation and looking where AI can help enable us even better. Obviously, the vendors we use have implemented AI specifically for revenue management, which has been huge in terms of AI and machine learning, but also in cybersecurity. We've got a lot of tools from vendors that we use that use AI to constantly look at how we're keeping up to date, trying to do AI penetration testing. That's something that's just not feasible with human resources. So it's been pretty phenomenal in being able to leverage that type of capability.
Oh, that's fantastic. You've been able to do a lot, and it seems like you have a long list still that you want to continue on with it. You had mentioned that in this pandemic, the priorities are about contactless type of technologies to make sure that the guests feel safe, and it's about survival. If you don't mind, talk about business acquisition process. How has that changed over the last 3, 4, 5 years? What kind of tools have you used in the sales processes, and how has that helped your company?
For us, in terms of business acquisition, we do actually over a third of our business with groups. So that allows us many advantages, but to really appeal to groups, it's about having all of our information digitized. They can see all the information about our property, lots of pictures, be able to submit RFPs to us, we can address those very quickly. And I just think it's that whole process of dealing with our large key customers that I think we've done a very good job with. From an acquisition, from a consumer experience, I think the whole industry still fights with the OTA battles. However, I think it really comes down to having a CRM, being able to market successfully to people because you know who they are, what they want, and what's important to them. So I think it's that focus from a customer kind of group or leisure side, and it's really from a group side, knowing your groups, having the flexibility to meet all their needs from a food and beverage, meeting space, capabilities.
Dan, one last question, and I'll bring our next guest on. Any support areas that you have digitized or automated, whether it's HR side of things or procurement, or you talked about CRM that you've implemented, any energy management systems that you have implemented, and how has that transition been?
Well, let's start with energy management. I'll follow on with Mark. I'm passionate about this type of thing as it relates to the environment. So for us, we've enabled all of our thermostats connected to the PMS, connected to the door lock, so that we'll automatically turn on the air as you open the door lock. We will then, as you leave the room and you're no longer occupying the room, we'll put the temperature to a different setting. That way we can save energy and save the environment. So I think that's just one way, and there's many ways that we're doing that from an environmental space. From an HR side, with COVID, we realized that we're trying to reduce that person-to-person contact, even for our team members, because we need to keep our team members safe. That's very important. So we have put our chat your service that we used to have for our guests for HR. So now you can chat your HR representative about all of your questions, whether maybe you've been on leave of absence, whatever it might be, but let's make it a better service, but let's give you that option, right? From a sales side and the support areas, we've built a extremely comprehensive data analytics environment. We've put Power BI on top of it, so they can now run from their phone, their tablet, the analytics they need to do better sales, understanding our business. So I think we've been able to enable a lot of the back office and key functions with that different technology. It's just not always about the guest, because at the end of the day, it's about providing the best service. And if we enable our team members, we enable our guests.
Superb. A lot of these things are equipping the associates to be able to deliver that service. So I'm glad that you were able to attend to both guest-facing and support areas. Dan, thank you for those insights. Please stay with us. There are lots of other questions. We'll be back with you in a little bit. But at this particular point, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Jones, who is the president of J Squared Hospitality Solutions. Jennifer, welcome to Hospitality Talks.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, thanks for taking the time. Jennifer, you've heard Mark and you heard Dan talk about some of the initiatives that they are working on, that they've dealt with. Tell us about your stakeholders that you're dealing with, as to what kind of thought process goes into evaluating some of the initiatives that you are looking at today.
Sure. I think Dan kind of mentioned this earlier. One of the key factors is process improvements. Process improvements will lead to labor savings. So that's something that we typically do a deep dive into. It's important to bring your vendors on, have them do their vanilla demonstrations, but take it another step further. Make sure that you're providing them use cases that are unique to your business operations, so that when you're evaluating, every PMS can check in and check out. That's really not what's important. What's important is that we're able to provide operations functionality that suits their needs. One too many times I've been implementing a product and we've been in the middle of training the users. When we come to find out, we stumbled upon a use case that really wasn't uncovered until now. And then we need to kind of scatter and figure out how we're going to find a solution for those things. Another thing that we consider is what IT footprint that technology will have in our business. Depending on the size of your hotel, a lesser footprint could be better. some hotels don't have the grandeur IT presence that larger resorts or enterprise brands have. So sometimes we like to try to see what products will allow us to make great partnerships with our vendors and allow them to maintain our systems. But on the other hand, scalability is another factor. As we continue to grow our organization, how simple is it to add on to that existing technology? Then we can centralize reporting and maybe pull some functions up to the corporate level. Another item that's very important to consider is automation and integration. So we want to make sure that we're taking out as much manual manipulation as possible, alleviating that swivel chair that we talk about, where we have to have humans be our interface on transferring data between systems. And then finally, making sure that you're going into business with a good partner. Customer service, if systems are all the same, customer service is the one differentiator. So I think that's an important factor during the evaluation process.
All those things that you brought up, that's a long list. And quite candidly, from a user perspective, at times it has been very difficult to check all those boxes. Even tying up with some of the partners, sometimes you don't know whether they will be able to survive the ups and downs of economy. How do you vet through all that to pick the right partner, to pick the right technology, and make sure that it delivers the functionality the users are looking for?
Sure. First and foremost, IT should never be the sole decision maker. You always need to incorporate operations. So form a team, include different verticals of people from operations, and make sure that you're doing a deep dive and gathering business requirements. Make a scorecard. Allow your operation to be a part of the evaluation and allowing them to score things. What's important here may not be important here, or they did really well in this area and they really need to do better in this area. And using those kinds of metrics to help evaluate, I think makes it easier. And then a year later, when we implement the product and people come to you, why did we choose this product? You can always go back to that documentation and review that.
Fair enough. Can technology help a hotel create a competitive advantage?
Absolutely. I touched a little bit about how important integrations are. I think integrations have definitely helped us automate by mapping data between systems. This helps us with accurate reporting. It frees up that swivel chair. I think some people get a little scared when they hear integration. They think about another point of failure. But I feel the competitive advantage can be won when you have people that take time to maintain the systems, monitor them. And so, let your staff do what they do best, which is serve the guest, and take those things that we can automate out of their hands.
And one last question before I turn it over to Sam. Has the industry focus or your stakeholders, are they focused on different things now? Should they be looking at different things during this pandemic?
Certainly. I was listening to another podcast and I heard someone say something that was really stunning, which I thought, cleanliness is the new luxury. So, and something that I never thought of before, which was about, where we used to keep housekeeping kind of in the back. We didn't want to be prevalent and upfront about housekeeping. Now that's going to be at the forefront. People want to be able to see the steps that we're taking to provide a cleaner environment, a safer environment. So in regards to technology, I think that there's an opportunity now during downtime and some of these closures that people can take advantage of a lot of technology, either projects or take a step back and take a look at their existing set. Some things that may take major downtime, which is very hard to do when we're open, is take a look at your property management system, your sales and catering system, things that really are detrimental to take down when we're operating. Maybe there's a major upgrade that's needed. Maybe this is a good time to take a look and make sure we're compliant from a credit card EMV standpoint. That's something that's very hard to take down is credit cards while we're open. So yeah, I think those are some of the things that we can look at. Dan, I know, mentioned mobile key. If you have the capital, and this is a great time to be swapping out locks that are BLE enabled so that you can accept mobile key. People are comfortable with their mobile device now more than ever. If we can be able to turn on lights, turn on the TV and change channels, adjust our thermostat with our device, chat with hotel staff instead of touching the phone, I think those things are going to become very, very important.
In one quick comment, and I'll turn it over to Sam. You brought up the cleanliness as the luxury. A couple of episodes ago, one of our guests had talked about that this is almost a negative for the industry, because we're talking about cleanliness as if we were checking people into the dirty rooms, which is true. The hotels possibly have done everything plus more in making sure that a clean environment is provided, yet that has become the thing that is front and center. The things that are relative to your mobile device and connectivity to the systems in the guest room, are these technologies readily available that can be rolled out in the hotels, or is it something that you have to customize for your needs?
No, there are vendors who are starting to roll out these technologies. But I think that there also is some creativity on behalf of the organization implementing it. For example, we talk a lot about mobile key. I think being able to provide somebody a key and they don't even have to stop at the desk. We can check in ahead of time. But we have to get that key. We need your cell phone number. We cannot control every channel a guest makes their reservation on. We've got the OTAs, we've got the GDS, we've got our online booking engine, and it's very hard to mandate that we get that person's mobile number. People can put a fake number in, people can put an office number in. So that's something that I'm working a lot on with our CRS providers and such, to make sure that we can either make fields mandatory. We can make sure that we provide communication either in a confirmation letter, in cancellation deposit policies that basically state, listen, we need your mobile number. Please make sure that you apply it during your reservation stage. Once we get their phone number, not only can we deliver mobile key, we can start using these SMS messaging apps that Dan referred to earlier. So they're appless, right? There's no app to download because we're just using SMS text to correspond with each other. So getting an email to be able to check in online, basically we're kind of building the blocks that enable us to not have to talk to somebody or see somebody, and we can pretty much handle it ourselves. I'd hate to think that that's the way of the future, because hospitality to me is important to have personal interaction, but those are some of the things that I think are on the forefront.
I think particularly in luxury establishments or upper upscale establishment, hospitality has always been about bringing people together, and it's a high touch industry, and consumer has required that. but slowly, I think we will shift towards, because of safety, we'll shift toward deploying some of these technological initiatives. Sam, over to you, please.
Thank you. Just had a quick comment from our viewers. We have Kathleen Sinnott, who is from Facebook, so she's really loved the topic, and thank you very much for Jennifer for sharing all those things that you just described. Somehow stuck in my mind the word cleanliness is a new luxury. I mean, is there a way, I mean, the old way, I'm repeating myself from previous episode, but there's an old way where some hotels used to put kind of a paper ribbon on top of the toilet seat to indicate the room has been clean. But in terms of technology, are there some digitalized ways that the customer will feel confident that the room is in the kind of is fresh specifically for them? I'm just throwing a very off the left side here a question to you.
Yes, absolutely. So taking all the paper out of the room, as Dan suggested earlier, I think is perfect. You know, there are things that we have in our guest rooms today that are going to be gone. Ice buckets, I can't imagine glasses are going to stay. We talked about how we were going the way of green and putting in the larger size amenities in the bathrooms for shampoo and conditioner to reduce waste. Well, I think we're probably going to turn back and go that direction. But in regards to technology, using your television as a way to communicate information about the hotel. We don't need the leather-bound compendiums to flip through anymore. You know, people should reach out to their vendors, make sure that providing the ability to have menus, see area attractions, give information about the fitness center and things like that. So the digital, or we can put, I was going to go, the digital sign we can put in the lobby, a touch screen. Again, I know there's touch. It's going to be touch, as much less touch as possible, but it's not going to be completely contactless. But just digitize everything. There's no reason that we need to be printing and placing things in the room.
Do you see there's two different approaches here? Do you see there will be more like an app-based where the customer will be downloading an app, and in this way also that the hotel can collect data about the customer experience, or do you see that maybe there is there's resistance from customers to download another app? What is your thought on that?
Apps are tough when you're smaller and you're independent. When you're a large brand chain, apps are a little easier, but you know, it's hard to convince people, you know, you're coming to my hotel once, you need to download this app. Yeah. When I referred to mobile key earlier and collecting their cellular number so we can send them the mobile key, we typically can use an SMS text that embeds the app that you have to download for mobile key. That's why mobile key has been tough to adopt. You know, your big brand chains like your Marriott's and your Hilton, they embed that within their loyalty app. But when you don't have that app, it's how do you figure out how to deliver mobile key? But there definitely is resistance from people about downloading more apps. But I think it's how you deliver it to help them determine whether they should use it or not.
Yeah. Well, Kathleen just comment there are accessibility issues to be considered in all of this. That's her comment from one of the viewers. Okay, well, thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate your comments and your input. And back to you, Abid.
Jennifer, any new developments for in-room technology? You know, the last big thing that was implemented was flat screen TVs and wideband access into the guest areas. Anything new that you see coming down the pike? And we will bring Dan back here in a little bit so that we can all discuss this collectively. But before we do that, anything new that you see that would be ready to be rolled out?
Sure. In direct relation to COVID, you know, a lot of those UV light pieces of hardware being placed in a room, I see is going to create a trend. Those are things where you can put your keys, your phone, and sit them. And supposedly UV ray light helps break down the contraction the virus, or not the contraction, but it sitting on material. So another thing is, we've always talked about making the comforts of home in our hotel room important. Streaming is a big thing. So, in terms of your alluding to TVs, maybe you don't need to upgrade your TVs at this time, but the adoption of something like a Chromecast that allows people to bring their content with them and stream it to the screens is really important. We have hospitality TVs in our market that don't allow us the luxury of being able to go directly to apps on our TV like we do at home. So providing functionality like a Chromecast or Apple TV, things like that, I think are going to be really important. People want to even stream music. It can be movies. It can be fitness applications. I'm seeing a brand starting to put all fitness equipment in rooms, like TRX straps and yoga mats and things like that, because I think that fitness rooms may not see as much volume as they used to. So yeah. Particularly as we start to open and we living with the virus, I think fitness rooms are going to be possibly the last place that gets opened up for you. So providing that service in the guest room is possibly the best way to go. You are absolutely correct. And Dan had brought that up earlier about providing people the choices, and it's up to them to select. So being able to stream their digital content on the TV is important. Dan, a question for you, if you don't mind. You deal with a lot of hotels that rely on group business, on meetings business. How do you think this COVID has impacted that, particularly with this digital interaction that we've all gotten so accustomed to, whether we like it or not?
I think obviously we have seen a major impact to our group business, right? People are not wanting to travel yet. I think people have realized that they can get work done remotely via Teams or Zoom a lot more effectively than they perceived earlier. So we obviously will see a change to our group business. I think what we're starting to see also is people saying, hey, we want to have a smaller group, but we want to include people via video conferencing into those group meetings, which is something we had never had before. It was everybody would always be there. So I think that's one way that you're going to see technology be able to support that group business. Hey, let's not bring everybody, but let's bring a subset of people together and bring everybody together digitally, right?
So, sorry, go ahead.
As you'd mentioned, the in-room entertainment part of that. As Jennifer said, streaming is very important. We put that into most of our hotels at this point because we believe that's the choice consumer wants. They just want to take their own content. And I'm kind of a firm believer. You had mentioned the biggest upgrade in rooms was the big flat screen TVs, and you're correct, because I think these days the in-room entertainment is brought into the room. Right? It's brought by the guest. It is brought onto their cell phone or their tablets. And I think if you can enable that through streaming and others, you don't want to put more tech in the room. You just want to enable what people bring.
And I think that is truly the key. I'm of the belief that pretty soon we're going to design guest rooms around the television size, because we went overnight from having, I don't know, whatever it was, 30 inches to now 70 inches of screens. And these screens are smart screens. They're not just broadcasting what is piped into the guest rooms. People are bringing their own content with them. But for that, there is infrastructure that is required. And a lot of the old legacy systems are still not able to do that, though technology is facilitating it. But there are still hurdles to overcome. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on some of the older hotels as to how they can adopt some of these new technologies?
Sure. Cabling, of course, plays a huge role in it, and the availability of it. I think this is a great time to assess if you're ready for an TV upgrade. Sit down with your vendor. Make sure you understand the pros and the cons of both a set-top box solution versus getting hospitality smart TVs that are integrated with Pro-Idiom, which don't need the set-top box. And then maybe other pieces of functionality that you would layer onto it. If things can be run over Wi-Fi, please make sure that your Wi-Fi backbone is up to snuff. Look at your bandwidth requirements. So there's definitely some things that older hotels need to look at before they start diving in and upgrading, because the infrastructure and the backbone is going to be really important.
And quite candidly, in urban locations, this might be a little bit easier. In mature markets, it's a bit easier. When you go to resort destinations and far away destination, it definitely becomes even more difficult to implement some of these things, because getting wideband can be a challenge. Having worked in some of the emerging economies and emerging destinations, whilst I'm a firm believer in deploying technology, it was always very difficult. Dan, a question for you. Can technology help us better communicate with the guests and gain their confidence that our efforts are going to keep them safe?
Technology. So I'm not sure that that's really the technology play. I actually think it's more, I'm going to go old school. It is about communicating what you're doing and how you're doing it. And technology obviously can come into play with that, whether it's digital signage, whether it is what you have online, what you send with pre-arrival information. But, going back to the cleanliness is a new luxury. I'm not sure I agree it's a luxury. I think cleanliness has always been that table stakes that you need to have. I just think we're highlighting more exactly what we have done that people just never thought about or aware of. So I think by highlighting that, communicating it before, during your stay, digital signage, texting, being more out there and prevalent with that, it's not truly about technology. It's truly about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and making sure that people understand it.
Fair enough. I guess we have to use the tools that our customers use, and that goes back to understanding our customers as to where they reside and how they feel comfortable with it. You brought up about the choices earlier. Let me turn it over to Sam here. Sam, over to you, please.
Thank you. Just one of our viewers, Badia Gunatilake, I apologize if my pronunciations was not very clear. He made just a comment that is all these tools are affordable and practical in line with operations at all times. Rates have come down almost 50% in the market. I think he's referring to the cost of bringing services. Have you noticed that, or is it what are the rate issues for bringing new solutions? Are they still at the prime, or are the actual prices going down?
Is that for Dan?
Oh, sorry, Dan.
I think with the cloud, obviously it's made it easier. I think you're shifting, instead of buying the license or capital, I think you're shifting how you spend your money to more operating expense. Yeah. And I think that is cheaper overall, because I was able to justify what I've done over the last few years with cost savings. However, I wouldn't say it's 50%. I'd say it's probably been about a 10 to 20% cost savings because of that. Looking at a total cost of ownership.
Yeah, there's also now a way of thinking that the hotels are having challenges to make available capital to invest, that they are also looking for solutions that they can provide more sort of a revenue share, and idea being that this is a long-term relationship with the vendor or the solutions provider, that they are looking at the revenue share. Is that something that you have any thoughts on, this approach to getting solutions for the hotels, that it's on a revenue share basis rather than investment?
We've looked at it. We haven't really found a model that works for us yet.
Yeah.
So it's tough to share the revenue on that component. It's just very hard to get our finance people aligned to that. Open to it, but haven't found the right means or the need yet.
Okay, very good. All right. What do you think, Abid? Are we in any hot button questions that you have for the panels, or should we be looking at sort of the lighter side of things? Since in Finland we are celebrating the longest day of the year, so we are sun sets at around close to midnight, and we are getting up already by 2 a.m. So it's going to be a long day for us.
Enjoy that sunlight, because you all know that Finland, pretty soon you're going to be dealing with the longest dark times as well. So enjoy the sunlight.
Well, thank you for reminding me. I'm trying to enjoy it.
Well, Dan and Jennifer, we always like to end our session with some uplifting stories, some positive things that you might have seen in the industry, or for that matter, something that you might have learned about yourself. So Jennifer, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you. Anything that you would like to share?
Sure. In these kind of dark times during COVID and how badly it's hit the hospitality industry, I've heard tons of great stories about employers, like when they were closing down the hotels, giving away things in refrigerators and freezers and things that would go bad to try to help out. I'd love to give a shout out to an organization called Kripalu. They are a fitness, a wellness and yoga center in Massachusetts, and they committed to keeping all 400 and some staff members paid with full health benefits on staff for the first 6 weeks. And then when COVID was extended, they extended it another 8 weeks. So they, through pledges and funding and charity donations from the community and longtime loyal guests, I just thought it was amazing that they were able to keep that many employees paid. Unfortunately, when COVID did extend at the end of May, they did decide to close down for the rest of the year. But at least they gave their employees an opportunity to still not panic quite yet. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, that's fabulous. I know these kind of conversations and these kind of things are very, very, very difficult to undertake. It's unfortunately, it's all about survival these days, but hats off to them for making it work. Please recognize them with the hashtag Hospitality Heroes, because it is great that people hear about these things so that we can learn from each other. Dan, over to you. Anything that you would like to share about some personal learnings or industry things that are being done that you thought were very unique and uplifting?
From a personal side, what I think really stuck out to me is, unfortunately, we've had to put a majority of our staff on leave of absence in the last few months. And it's been heartbreaking, because you know what people are going through from personal side. But out of the remaining people on my team, I must have got pinged by at least 5 or 6 people saying, Dan, how can I help contribute to those who are on LOA? How can I help them out? Right? Our company did a lot to help them out with extending medical care and benefits and putting together funds to help our team members on LOA. But the employees that were remaining were saying, how can I give? What else can I do? And that just, it wasn't what I was expecting. I figured everybody was going to be more hunkering and taking care of themselves. But there was very much of, how can I help my fellow employees who I realize are going through a lot? And that, just from a personal side, made a big impact on me.
Well, that is quintessential hospitality, and that's what our industry is about. And honestly, it gives me goosebumps to hear that, because there are stories where some of the staff in restaurant industry gave some of the hours to their colleagues so that both of them can make their financial situation work. Absolute heroic things in this time where everybody is going through some hellacious time. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think we've approached the end of our episode. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. Your insight has been fabulous. Jennifer, superb to have you on this episode. We would love to have you back in another couple of months to check on how things have gone and what initiatives might have worked. Thanks to all of our viewers that might have joined us, whether it's on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. It's great to have you. Please send us questions. Please continue to tell us the topics that you would like to address. With that, I'm turning it over to Sam. Sam, over to you for closing, please.
Thank you. Well, just a shout out again to Badia Gunati Lake. I hope I got the name correctly this time. And for joining us on YouTube. And Kathleen Sinnott, a friend of mine on Facebook. So really great. Thank you very much for contributing. Now, I also like to just thank all the your replay viewers who joined us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and also on Facebook. And thank you very much for supporting the hospitality talks. Now, if you're watching us from YouTube, there is in order for you to be notified, just first of all, subscribe and then press that notification bell, and you'll be notified every time we go live. Well, these words, I just wish everyone a very happy midsummer day, and because I'll sure be joining this and enjoying this with my wife, and we will look forward to catching up with you next time.
Thank you very much.